This next topic only interests you if you eat. If not, go watch something else. My hometown of Boulder has some interesting things. The county is now saying you can't farm the way you used to. Paul Danish is a former county commissioner, former city council member, former Daily Camera writer. Good God, you can't hold a job, can you?
It's amazing how many ways you can get your ass fired in this world.
And Jon Schlagel is a farmer with Niwot Farms.
Yes.
And you do what's known as tenant farming, among other things. What tenant farming is basically you lease land that somebody owns,
Yes.
and you farm it. They own
Yes.
the land, but you work it for a season or whatever your lease is, and you farm it.
Yes. And I mean, we farm some of our own property. We rent some from Boulder County open space, and we rent some from other private ownership that have conservation easements. So it's about a third of each.
All right, let's jump right into what's going on up in Boulder County. You used to rent some land from private owners, and you would farm it. And those private owners, how dare they, decided to grow older and decided to sell off their asset, the land, and Boulder County bought it, and now you're renting it from Boulder County. Should be the same sort of thing, no big difference. There is a difference. Boulder is not letting you farm the products you want to farm. What are they saying you can't do?
Up till now, 5 years ago, we could pretty much farm what crops we wanted. 5 years ago, they instituted a cropland policy, which took a lot of effort by open space staff, other renters, farmers in the area, and we developed a really comprehensive policy. Now that policy is due to expire, and so
long story short,
they
just want to say you can't do any genetically modified organisms. You can't plant the food that you've traditionally planted, corn and other things.
Yes.
Because the county knows what's best. And let's talk about the county, since you were so involved with it for long.
They can, under the current policy, they can grow Roundup Ready corn, and they can grow BT corn, and they can grow, is it Roundup Ready sugar beets?
Sugar beets, yes.
However, it was a policy set for a given time, and that policy is running out. So the county is being asked to extend that and allow them to grow these 3 genetically modified crops. Plus, they would also like to add genetically modified alfalfa, which is coming up.
Heaven forbid.
And also a genetically modified corn that is drought resistant.
Right. But if I understand the situation, there's some special interests, namely a lot of the markets that sell organic food saying, no, we don't want you guys to make that. I think that should be more of a market thing. But if I get this right, the county is possibly going to say, you can't plant what you want. Who gets victimized in this? Why do you care that this? I've known you too long. I don't think you could grow a house plant. So I can't. Why do you care if this guy can't farm the products he feels are the most marketable?
Well, I think I care a lot for several reasons. One is it could put him out of business. That's the first local concern. Second, if these sorts of bans are allowed. And remember, the people who are asking for them are not just concerned about county open space. They want to use that as a springboard to ban all genetically modified crops. And they've been quite open about where they're coming from on this for a long, long time. My concern is not just a local concern, but it's the concern of how do you feed a world that is growing at 80 million people a year. And the way you do it is by what Norman Borlaug, the founder of the Green Revolution, called scientific agriculture, which is you find ways of doing more with less, and that is by making your crops more productive. And you can do that by either breeding, which we have been doing in this world for about 8,000 years now, or you can do it by instead identifying the genes that cause certain things and placing them into the plant in a laboratory.
Before this, you rented the exact same land from private owners. And if they didn't like what you were planting, they could rent it to somebody else or let it go barren. They would lose a lot of money, which they needed to make their mortgage payments and the rest. Now that the county owns it, that's not really a big deal. They don't mind. It's not like their budget depends on renting this out. So they're in a much better bargaining position to tell you you can't plant this stuff. And you've been planting this stuff for how long?
Well, GE crops have been around for about 20 years and only approved on open space for the last 5 years. It's interesting, though, the county does collect nearly $1.5 million in rent from these 20-some thousand acres of open space that they rent.
Yeah, they got taxpayers. They'll just take it from me. Have you seen my tax assessment?
I know. But what's interesting, too, is that there is a coalition of even the organic farmers who agree that we need the GMOs alongside the organic growers as a coexistence, that it shouldn't be just organic or it shouldn't be just traditional agriculture, but a mix of the two. There is a goal set to have 20% of the acres organic, which hasn't been met. And it's interesting that...
Why hasn't it been met?
Well, just in the last year, 17 or 18 of the organic growers went out of business. And it comes back to the economy of scale. You still have to have enough sales to support living in Boulder County. And so agriculture has survived by growing and being innovative. And it's not even modern agriculture anymore. It's precision agriculture.
Let me ask you, because you're really one of the fathers of open space in Boulder. I mean, this was your signature from the beginning. From before I was even born, before anyone was born, you were working on this issue. How much is this a role for a county government, heaven forbid a city government? You know, I thought that they take care of the sheriff's office. I thought that they took care of our water and our roads and made sure that we had firefighters. And now they're trying to say how much precisely should be organic food versus genetically modified food grown on their lands, and what type of Listen, they're good people in Boulder County, and they might be great people who have opinions on GMOs, but they're not, you know, they're not scientists on this issue.
Well, it's
What's
worse
their capability?
It's worse than being not scientists. They simply don't know what they're talking about. Let's be very honest about this. GMOs became an issue when certain groups on the left, and in Boulder I would name specifically the Rocky Mountain Peace and Justice Center, decided to use it as an organizing issue. And they started raising all sorts of fears about genetically modified crops and frankenfoods and so on. But a very strange thing has happened, and that is we've been doing this now for 20 years, not on Boulder County land, but in the United States. Over 90% of the corn and soybeans grown in the United States and 100% of the sugar beets are genetically modified crops. And I would want to ask the question, where are the victims? I mean, you would think the supermarket aisles would be filled with corpses at this point, that you'd go out in the parking lot and there'd be all sorts of bodies lying around. I mean, most of the food supply, you know, this stuff moves through it, would have genetically modified product in it, and there's none there. So I think what you have here is people who are worried about largely an imaginary fear, which has been created for political purposes, and are ignoring some very real and serious problems, which is supplying enough food for a growing
in the meantime,
world.
while they're concerned about that, they're able to put somebody like you out of business by these decisions.
To answer your question, from somebody who has bought a lot of land, and I've between the city of Boulder and Boulder County, I was a county commissioner in Boulder County, and I was a city councilman. I've probably voted to buy 50,000 acres of land. I think that regulating GMOs in Boulder County beyond what the federal government has done is a serious overreach.
John, and you don't know the character. You don't know the character of elitists in Boulder. They know how to run everything.
I know the character. I'm painfully aware of it.
All right, we're going to run out of time before we know it.
Yeah.
Let me just ask you about this. So it seems to me that consumers can make this decision, especially in Boulder. You can't swing a dead cat without hitting a organic grocery store in Boulder. So it's not like there's a lack of food choices there. And if they want to farm on this land, they can bid on the land, but you're saying they're not. What is it that you want? We got 1 minute left. What do you want the county of Boulder to do? Why do I have a feeling it's some sort of variation of just leave me the hell alone?
I just think a continuation of the cropland policy with slight modifications. with the option of adding drought-resistant corn, Roundup Ready alfalfa, and maybe, who knows, the technology coming down the road that could be really exciting, and let the farmers who know how to farm take care of this property the best way they can.
Half a minute. Let me challenge you. None of this would be happening if your ridiculous plans for the government to buy so much land and make it open space didn't happen. If this was still owned and the people sold it to another private individual, none of this would be happening.
Oh, nonsense. What would happen is you'd have subdivisions wall to wall from in the eastern part of Boulder County. There's no question about that. I mean, the land was saved as open space and farmland because we bought it.
And so the county needs to let farmers farm.
That's my idea.
Paul, thank you as always. Thank you. Thank you. Listen for me on KHOW Radio. Check out the Independence Institute, independenceinstitute.org, and we'll see you next week.